Hello, everybody, and welcome to What's Up on the EDH Rec Twitch stream. This is a weekly AMA / interview style show where we bring on well-known people in the Magic the Gathering community and annoy the hell out of them with lots of questions. I'm your host, Andy Zupke. Joining me tonight is the amazing, the incomparable Rachel Weeks. Rachel, say hello to everybody.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight. Sorry to keep you waiting.
That's all right. You're worth waiting for. Now, we're going to kick this off with our first question. The big question right off the bat, the one that's on everybody's minds, the burning question is, Rachel, how the hell are you? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's been kind of a frantic day, but good. I have, one of the best jobs ever, and live in a place with perfect weather. And what is there to complain about?
Wow, brag much?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, all right, cool. Whatever. I only live in the Midwest where it's like 30 degrees out, but that's fine. It's fine.
Look, I did my time. I did my time. I grew up outside of Chicago. I grew up in the western suburbs in Naperville.
All right, so you know what it's like then.
I do. I do. I got in my covered wagon and I headed west.
Nobody got dysentery along the way, I hope?
No, no, alas. No,
Alas, you were hoping?
no big stories.
Yeah?
I took my time. I went to Iowa and then I went to Denver
Okay.
first. So, it was a slow go out west.
Now, for anybody in chat who doesn't know who you are, why don't you go ahead and give us a little info about who you are and what you do?
Oh, it'd be my pleasure. I am Rachel Weeks, so I am one of the hosts of the Command Zone podcast. I've been on Game Nights and Game Nights Live, and I used to host a podcast called The Commander Sphere with my dear friend Dan Sheehan. That show's awesome, a ton of fun. Yeah, I've been sort of bopping around Magic content since about 2020.
2020. Wow. All right. Um, well, thank you so much for being here on What's Up. We're very excited to have you on the show. People in
It's my
chat,
pleasure.
this is an AMA, so we're supposed to ask her anything. So if you've got questions for Rachel, go ahead and drop them in chat. But do me a huge favor, tag EDH Recast because it makes it a lot easier for me to see all the important questions. Okay. Now we're gonna start this off with a few of my own questions, and then we'll start sprinkling some of yours in as well. Now, I like to always start these off by having our guest give us your origin story. Tell us
Sure.
how you, I guess, twofold here, how you got into magic and then how you got into content creation.
Sure. So I got into magic through a friend of mine when I was doing comedy in Denver. I was playing the DC deck building game with a group of comedians. So I was a stand-up comic at the time, and we were playing the DC deck building game probably 3 or 4 times a week. Like so much of this game, and it's one box, and there's only so many different ways you can play it. And eventually, my friends who all played Magic were like, okay, we're going to teach you Magic because we're all done playing this game as often as you want to play it. So they taught me Magic, and I learned how to play a little in paper, but mostly in the Duel of the Planeswalkers phone app.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And that's how I learned skills. And my play group sort of bloomed from there. Played with a bunch of comedians in Denver, and eventually moved out to Los Angeles. So I moved out here in 2019 to pursue stand up and to, you know, I don't know, make it big, have a Netflix special. I don't know. And then the pandemic happened, the lockdown happened, and stand up was no longer an option.
Yeah.
Going outside your house to stand in front of a whole bunch of people, not a thing. And you could perform online, and I just really didn't want to do that. And so a buddy and I was like, all right, well, let's see if we can make this podcast real. So I started the Commander Sphere with Dan, Around that same time, I started live streaming D&D on Twitch with a group of comedians called Better Than Heroes. And I was with the Commander Sphere for a number of years and eventually jumped to the Command Zone uh, after my day job. I was working for Channel Fireball, actually.
Oh, okay.
And,
I didn't know that.
and yeah, I worked for Channel Fireball as a graphic designer. And
Nice.
Command Zone had me on to do a couple of game nights because there wasn't a ton of options locally. And they were like, "You're a comedian and in the magic space, come on in." And after that, they asked me to join the show full time.
Nice. And we're very lucky that they did, because you've been an excellent addition to that cast. Um,
Thank you.
Now, the next question I'm going to ask you is probably the most important question of the night, so I want you to think really hard about
hmm
this. Who would win in a fight, Jimmy or
hmm
Josh?
Uh, Probably Josh. Josh works out a little bit more,
Uh
but
huh.
Jimmy's scrappy. You never know. You never
Yeah.
know what he's going to do.
Yeah. I'm thinking, like, Josh has got the bulk, but Jimmy's got the scrappiness. He could just tire him out a little bit.
Jimmy doesn't give up. He's a mono red flip player. He'll be out
Excellent.
of cards and still swinging.
Excellent. So, what has been the most surprising thing about joining the command zone? What's the thing that happened that you least expected?
Um, God, I don't know. I mean, I guess that it just my job exists. Like I went from being on Scryfall during my workday as a graphic designer to being paid to be on Scryfall during my workday as a salaried podcaster.
Yeah,
I mean, like it's a true fairy tale type of job that is difficult to explain to people who do your taxes. But I don't know. I mean, there's so much more going on beyond behind the scenes than you ever would guess. There's so much more research, there's so much more editing, there's so much more consideration for making the games really fun. Like the deck building process that we go through is rigorous for game
really.
nights, but more importantly, game nights live, just to make sure that the decks we build are going to be cool. Like most of the time, these decks are only getting played for this one thing. So we really want to put the work in ahead of time to make sure that they do what you expect them to do on the big day.
Absolutely. Um, so we talked about what kind of stuff you do behind the scenes. Is it all as exciting as it looks on the videos, or is it a lot of mundane stuff as well, like any other job?
I mean, a job's a job. We do a lot of like back end stuff. Like I design a lot of our thumbnails and which isn't like super sexy work, but it's got to get done and we're
Yeah,
doing a ton of work to try and make them clear and engaging and work well for us and for our audience. So like there's more than just like sitting around and building decks all day. And eventually, like, there is a ton of cards. There's a lot of stuff that we have to go through. I have to research probably 20 of every legendary creature that comes out in every set every few months. And some of them I like, and some of them I don't like,
yeah,
and some of them look the same. And so, like, it can get very repetitive when you're like, okay, and from the top, here's how you build a Cast from Exile deck. You're gonna need these 15 cards
yeah.
and probably some other ones too. So it's it can get repetitive, but most of it's just a joy.
Sure. Yeah. Let's talk about another Boros equipment commander, right? Can't wait
Yeah.
for that.
We try and talk about ones we haven't like beaten to death recently. There was a
Yeah.
real food run about a year ago when
Mm-hmm.
there was like I think they did five Bulgari food-ish commanders that were like, okay, we're gonna stop explaining
Yeah.
these for a second and assume that somebody will have caught a previous one.
Absolutely. Do you think you'll ever get tired of talking about Commander?
Oh God, I'm so obsessed. It's really hard to know. Uh, I don't think so. I mean, Commander is a ever-changing format. There's always new cards, there's always new surprises. Um, there's a whole new like wave of mindset about how you build Commander. I think we're in like I'm of a generation of Commander players where like Commander is my first format, and I think I was like one of the earlier generations of like I entered
Hmm.
Magic through Commander.
Sure.
And now we're having like a whole new wave of Commander players that are entering Magic through Commander when Commander was like the end all be all of Magic. So it's the mindset about how to play Commander and what you want out of it, and um, you know, how people are engaging with it in terms of like Magicons or game stores. Like there's always some new corner case to investigate.
Cool. So you have over 10,000 followers on Blue Sky. First of all, can I have some?
Sure.
Cool. Thank you. I'm desperately needing some of those. Second, does it ever feel weird like knowing that you reach so many people? Like do you ever make a video and think, "Oh my god, this could be watched by 100,000 people?"
You stop thinking about it,
Mhm.
honestly. The numbers just become like you can't think about them as like 50,000 people have watched and considered your ideas because you get too self-conscious about it. Honestly, like the when it feels like I feel the most self-conscious about it is when I actually get to watch people who or get to meet people who watch the videos at like MagicCons.
Okay.
Because people will be like, "Hey, you said this thing in this video and I loved it and I built this deck and now it's my favorite deck." And you're like, "I don't even remember saying that. That's
Yeah.
insane." But it's so beautiful, right? Like that's the
Hmm.
coolest thing is that like I can have an idea that can make somebody feel creatively inspired and make something that they're proud and excited about.
And it's obviously great that you're using your power for good to inspire people
Trying.
to.
I'm
um,
trying. But yeah,
Chat.
I mean, I guess I've been used to like being on stage for a long time, right? Like I've
Yeah.
been a stand-up comic for like 10 years. I was a swim coach before that. I'm used to having a voice, I guess.
Okay.
This is the biggest one I've ever had.
One more question from me, and then we'll head on over to see what chat's got to say. Um, do you do any more stand up? Are you kind of taking a break on that, or
I'm taking a break right now. I'm not like a never go back to comedy. Like I don't have a hard and fast rule about it right now. There's not a ton of, I don't know if space in my life is the right way to put it, but like
sure?
work a full-time job that's
Yeah.
very demanding and I do stuff after like extracurricularly that is also related to work. I'm doing like I do stuff like this. I go on other channels. I am on the Commander Format panel. I've got a lot of irons in the fire that don't leave a ton of time to give stand-up my full attention.
Sure.
And I'm sort of an all or nothing person. Like I have continued when I got into stand-up, I was like, this will be a fun thing. And then I tried to make it my job and make it my full life. And then I got into magic and it couldn't just be a hobby. Now it's my whole life.
Hmm.
So who knows what's next? Maybe it'll be stand-up again and we'll be in an ever-turning cycle.
Excellent. All right, chat. We're coming for you. If you got more questions, drop them in there and tag EDHRECast. Crab Baskets says question for the illustrious Rachel.
Oh,
Right? We got some very
yeah, I'll
very
take it.
nice people here, especially Crab Baskets. Wonderful person. What's your favorite breakfast food?
Breakfast tacos is
Oh,
has
that
been probably my most common breakfast item. Just a little bit of egg, a little bit of potato.
chorizo.
That's my favorite.
Chorizo.
Yeah, I like a chorizo. We've got Home State Tacos is like a small breakfast. Um, well, it's a breakfast taco chain in this area. It's not small, but it was really close to my old apartment, so we used to go to Home State a ton. That's my favorite.
Excellent. Mike Carosa says, "Hey, buddy."
Oh, who's that? Because he's an
Eh,
old friend.
yes. Asked if you miss doing stand up much. We kind of already discussed that. The Triple Sevens says, "Ask Rachel what's her favorite sandwich."
Oh, um, I always like a little bit like a cheese and a sweet, like brie and fig,
Oh,
or
okay.
like a honey with cheese. That kind of stuff is always my favorite.
Okay.
Light.
Yeah. All right. That sounds delicious. Let's see. 3 Elk says, Rachel, chaining
Nice.
turns versus infinite turns. Should there be a distinction at bracket 3?
Sure, like one of them wins the game and one of them drags out the game. I think one of them is certainly more frowned upon. I think chaining turns is infinitely more frustrating than if you take infinite turns, then we assume we'll give you the benefit of the doubt that you can figure out a win from there before you take yourself. So I think that's a reasonable difference. The one thing that makes it interesting is if a deck is designed to take infinite turns, it is often designed to chain turns or incidentally can chain turns,
Mm-hmm.
just because of the density of counterspell or extra turn spells that you need to have a reliable infinite turn combo. So they sort of exist in the same space. Um, I also find that infinite turns combos are not super intuitive to new players and are definitely not very satisfying. Where if you're like, okay, I take infinite turns, and you're a new player, you're like, okay, how am I dead? Like, what do
Yeah.
you do? You're like, oh, I just take all the time and it's mine. Like it's more intuitive for more invested players to know that if you take infinite turns, the game is over somehow and it doesn't really matter how. But if you're a new player and you're used to a more board game mentality, then it can be very dissatisfying to be like, oh, I never take a turn again and somehow I die eventually. So I think like that mindset should probably prevent it from bracket three regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just because of the perception of extra turns in general. But I understand that like as a more invested player, you're like, I take infinite turns, the game's over. It's not like a time suck. So I think they will live in the same space just for clarity of language and clarity of perception. But I agree that there is a difference between taking infinite and taking a lot of turns.
Excellent. We got a raid from Mental Misplay. Thank you, Alan and friends, for bringing all of your friends along. We are
Hi,
doing an
Alan.
AMA with Rachel Weeks. So if you got questions for her, drop them into chat, tag EDHRECast so we can see them. And we are carrying on with Dice and Dinosaurs. Wants to know who inspired you to do comedy. Do you still watch stand up? And if so, who do you recommend?
Sure. The reason I got into comedy is I got sick in college and I like literally couldn't move. I got mono really bad and I just couldn't keep my eyes open. So I started listening to a whole bunch of stand up. And at the time, I really liked Mike Birbiglia. I liked Dylan Moran. I listened to a lot of, and I liked. Oh no, I'm not gonna be able to think of her name right now. Ah!
Well, that is a face.
Anyway, I can't think of her name right now with
Yeah.
what the other it's not important. So I listened to a lot of albums then, and that sort of inspired me to listen to more while I was working. And like I said, I'm a very obsessive person. Once I get into something, I'm like, how do I do it? How do I do it right? How do I do
Yeah.
it more? How do I move to a city where I can do it more? How do I move to a city where I can get paid to do it more? And that's how you wind up in Los Angeles. Um, that's kind of how I got into it. I still watch stand up a fair amount. I like listening to it. Um, I think the one comedian, I guess there's two that I'd recommend that like all comedians know, but not a lot of non-comics know, is Maria Bamford. If you haven't listened to Maria Bamford, she's doing some of the most creative, most iconic stand-up on stage, just sort of ever. She's the best. She had a TV show that's lovely. You should watch it if you haven't seen it. Um, and I've always really liked Kurt Braunohler is crazy funny and really just sort of a wild man. So I like his album How Do I Land is the one that I recommend the most.
Excellent. You were talking about like hobbies and like getting obsessed and getting into them and that kind of thing. And a couple years ago, I picked up the hobby of making cocktails. And I also
Mm.
have this obsessive thing where I, want to get into it and do it and like make all the things, but you can't do that with cocktails because you literally die.
You
So,
will you there is a look, the stand up kind of has the same road. So uh, Mike's talking about how do I land. Kurt Braunohler had this joke where he hired a skywriter, like a guy who flies a plane and writes letters in the sky. He hired one to write "How do I land in smoke in the air?" It's an incredibly expensive and silly joke, and he's
yeah,
the best.
that's quite the prank. I dig it. Let's see. Georgia Dolio says, "Why on the Command Zone intro when you're with Jimmy or Josh, you don't sing like when they both introduce the show or the theme?"
When I started, Josh was like, "You don't have to sing." And I don't even think I ever expressed like I won't sing. It's not really my vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I was in choir. I sing a lot of karaoke. Like I'm not really worried about it. It was just sort of something that got transitioned out when I started. And I think it feels like a Josh and Jimmy thing. Like it feels like their thing.
Yeah,
So it feels more shoehorned for me to be like, let me just sing with my boss. Like we didn't have like we're friends now, but that rapport has like happened while people watched. So
sure.
it's a very different vibe. And when like, when I host with one of the guys as opposed to when they host with each other, because that's what happens when you make a podcast together for 10 years.
So you all weren't already like good friends with each other when they invited you to join the Command Zone?
I mean, I'd done game nights twice
Yeah.
at that point, and I had done like three test episodes. I think it's Dominaria, not remastered. It's the
United?
Dominaria United. That's it. Was my first like test episodes as a potential host. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not like fundamentally against singing. I didn't kick down the door and say, "We're never singing again." It's just sort of their thing.
You weren't like the guy in the Monty Python movie who kept interrupting the dude trying to sing a song? Dope, dope,
We're
dope,
here to
stop.
talk about magic cards, and we're going to be very serious about it.
Yeah. Let's see. Big Lil Sis asks, "What's your favorite art from a magic card?"
Ooh, I mean, I have a lot of favorite artists.
Mm-hmm.
There's not one that I can point to that I'm like, that's the one. Because there's so many, right? Like I mean, there's an unbelievable range of styles and choices that are also cool. Jesper Icing is one of my favorites because I think he really does a good job of painting for the magic card size. There's a lot of artists that try and fit so much detail into a tiny box that you can't really appreciate all of it. And Jesper does one really expressive, like beautiful figure and kind of does like a monotoned background or monochromatic background. So it's very legible and it has a lot of character to it. So I always like what Jesper does. Evan Fong's been one of my favorites lately. Evan just did oh God, what's his name? The new Sultai indestructible guy that you can cast stuff off the top of other people's library. Anyway, I can name every other word on that card. He's a 2/1 with indestructible when he hits. Good, but I don't know his name. Um, she did that one. It's absolutely gorgeous. I've always liked Wiley Beckert, which is sort of a commonly held
Hmm.
favorite. RK Post is one of the best of all time.
Sure. Yeah.
Hard to argue with his work. There's just there's a lot of really cool ones.
Cool. The Triple Sevens says, ask Rachel if she designed playmats, and if so, are there still any Wrath of Godzilla playmats left? Thanks.
I did back in the day before I was making any the day. It was like 2019. Um,
Back in my
when
day.
before back in my day, 6 years ago. Um, I used to make playmats for Inked Gaming. I don't sell them anymore. They were fun to do at the time, but I ended up going a different route in the content creation side. So they're no longer available, but if you see one out there, there are a few playmats that I did. I like drew them on a trackpad in my tiny apartment in Los Angeles.
Okay. Alter No Ego says, are there different restrictions for deck building for better content? For example, more draw, less board wipes?
Oh, yeah. I mean, building a deck for content is not totally different than building a deck for to play to keep as a personal deck,
Hmm.
but I look for very different things in terms of what I want to play on camera versus what I want to keep forever. Because some things that you build on camera are like really cool one-trick ponies, where you're like, I know that I can build a consistent deck that can do a really cool thing that's going to be different and fun to like witness. Um, but I'm not necessarily a fan of decks that just kind of do the same thing over and over. I like decks that are flexible, that
Hmm.
like leave me with a lot of different choices and roads in terms of how they win or in terms of like what they look like from game to game. And so I think different things appeal to me as somebody who appears on content and then somebody who plays Commander, for fun.
Yeah.
POTUS, the Fang Keeper. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think that's a big reason why I stopped running tutors in my decks, just because it always led to the same outcome every time when I run them, and I don't
Sure.
want my decks to be the same outcome every time. I want to have an
Yeah.
experience each time I play it, not like I win the game this way each time, you know?
Tutors definitely have a role. I think tutors are better if you're trying to build around like a specific card. Like the deck I have with the most tutors in it is my mono red Norin stickers deck.
Uh-huh.
And there's just not a lot of good ways to get stickers on that little jerk. So you run a lot of tutors to figure out how to make that mess work.
Hmm.
So I think there's a place for it, but I think if I'm building something for content, I definitely want it to have a lot of card draw. I want it to be able to do its thing pretty guaranteed. I want it to be super consistent and reliable. I goldfish it a lot to make sure it's predictable. Um, because the last thing you want to do is get a deck on camera and then it does something that you just totally don't expect, either locking somebody out of the game or popping off too fast or not working at all. Um, so I think consistency is a big thing I look for when I'm building for content.
Hmm.
And yeah, like I guess I'm lighter on board wipes, but I'm kind of always light on board wipes. I usually run two. I think that's pretty normal for me.
Yeah. Same here. Wipe the board too many times, it just makes the game long, and
Yeah, at some
nobody
point I'd
wants a
rather
long game.
lose.
Yeah.
Like at some point I'd just rather lose the game than cast another board wipe.
Right?
And that's fine.
Hmm. Let's see. Sega Genesis 91 says, my question for Rachel is, what is her thought process when building slash upgrading a deck?
Um, Depends on the deck, I guess. Some of them are very clear and I get excited. Like I saw Seb Sunin and I kind of knew what that deck list looked like for me. So I was just like, all right, I wanted some proliferate stuff. I wanted some frog stuff. I wanted it to be flexible and fun and um, froggy. And then some of them like with the more recent, the Mono Black Sidisi, I'm like, okay, I know a couple cards, but I'm gonna have to test all day to figure out what works and if it works at all and if it's too powerful or not powerful enough. Um, so most of the time I just throw sort of a haphazard 100 together and I goldfish it a bunch and see what happens. And then I'll change the deck and goldfish it a bunch and see what happens. And I'll do that until I'm pretty happy with the deck list. That's probably my most common play pattern. I think that's how I build for content. That's how I build for most of my personal decks. But lately, I'm a little bit less precise about it all. I'd rather throw 100 cards together from around the house and see what a deck feels like in a game before I invest a ton of money into a personal deck.
Sure. How many decks do you have in paper right now? And which one's your favorite?
No, there's no way of knowing.
It can't.
They're infinite and all around us. And any,
They're lining the walls.
oh my God, my partner plays. So we have. I don't think it is an exaggeration to say we have 60 commander decks in this house. Um, I probably have 23 or 4, but that is not including 6 Lord of the Rings decks, which certainly count, but for some reason I think aren't don't are an exception. And then I have like Canlander decks on top of that, and we have a vintage cube. So we've got a lot of magic cards in this house.
I
But it's
think.
true in terms of my favorite, it depends on the day. I love playing Sidisi. I like Feldergriff is one of my prized possessions. I think Octavia is probably the best of both worlds.
Mhm.
My favorite to play. It's pretty. It's feels very uniquely mine. I think if you ask me what my favorite today is, it's Octavia.
Okay. I think Lord of the Rings is low key one of the best commander sets ever printed. There's just so
It
much to
is.
do in that set. I have 3 of my own
Mm.
Lord of the Rings decks, and I love all of them. They just do weird shit, and I love it.
So I upgraded. I knew I wanted to upgrade all the precons using only in-universe cards.
Okay.
So I bought all the precons and I upgraded all of those. So I had 4 decks. And then I was frustrated that I couldn't put Gimli into any of those decks because none of the precons are Gruul. Um, so I was like, well, we've got to build a different deck for Gimli. So I built a Naya Fellowship deck with the holiday product Aragorn. And then I was like, well, Gandalf doesn't really have a home in any of these decks that I'm like super excited about. So I built the holiday product Gandalf. So now there are 6 entirely in universe Lord of the Rings decks in this house,
Wow.
which is too many.
No, it's fine.
It's
Uh,
fine.
Elder Rage Mage says for a while Wizards was pushing out a lot of product each year. This year they seem to have throttled back to 3 in-universe sets and 3 universe beyond sets. Have they got the formula right?
Um, I think we're used to it. It's like here's the thing is like everybody says that there's too many products coming out, but then when there isn't a product that people are actively talking about and excited about, Blue Sky and Twitter devolve into chaos. So I feel okay about 6 a year, like the schedule they have for this year. I'm excited about a couple of sets. There's a couple of sets that aren't for me, and lucky me, I get to engage with them all.
Lucky. What set are you most excited about this year?
Uh, Avatar.
Avatar. I ask
Yes.
everybody on this show that question. You're the first person to say that.
I'm stoked.
Yeah.
I think it'll be really fun. I haven't seen anything about it obviously, but that's one of those products that I think is just fun. It's good, clean fun. So definitely that one, but Turkey is a big one for me. When I started with a collection that was largely built on cons cards, which is
Hmm.
why I built Sidisi, because I just had one. So it was this is one that I was excited about as well.
Cool. What would be like your dream IP for a Universes Beyond set that they haven't done already?
Mm, um, The Hobbit. Uh, no, I mean Lord of the Rings kind of just hit me square between the eyes. I think they just got me in one, um, which was super cool. I think all the time about if Baldur's Gate had hit when the Baldur's Gate game came out, because that would have really nailed me as well.
Hmm.
But those are my two big ones. I don't know if there's one that like Avatar is definitely an exciting one. I think it'll be a ton of fun. Um, Star Wars is one I grew up on, so would love to see what Star Wars cards look like. Sometimes my partner and I will just be like, "All right, what is a Jabba the Hutt magic card look like?" And we'll talk through card design, which is always fun.
Oh, nice. Um, I guess I kind of wish I had a partner who I could talk to about that, but my wife does not play
That's
Magic at
fair.
all.
It's probably for the best for your mental health.
It might be, yeah.
It's
Unless she'd
all
be,
power and toughness up here.
yeah.
It's just
I don't think I could handle her taking all my cards for her decks,
Mm,
which is what it would certainly
that is
devolve
a
into.
problem. Yeah.
Morgan would like to follow up on Mike Carrozza's comment. What would get you to do stand up again? And if you did, would you do magic stand up?
Uh, I don't think I do magic stand up. It's so niche and it's kind of like devolves into memes. Like I don't know if I have any like funny it would be very like commander players be like, which is exactly the kind of stand up
What
I ever
is with
did.
these commander players?
Yeah, exactly.
What about
Exactly.
at like a Magic
That's it.
Con?
Universe is beyond Seinfeld.
All right.
Honestly, I think I've had nightmares about doing stand-up at Magic Cons because you can't practice any of that material, right? There's no room where you can like go to an open mic and guarantee that the people in the audience know what you're talking about. So you're doing all fresh material in front of all Magic players. It's nerve-wracking. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely like situations where I would go back to stand up. I think um, LA is a tough town to do it casually because it's a very like career driven um, place to do stand up. Like if you're doing stand up in LA, you're really trying to get to act or to do commercials or to do stand up on late night or something like that. And I'm not really interested in the professional pursuit of stand up anymore. But the art of it is still great and a ton of fun. That I miss, the community.
Did you ever do any commercials?
No. Well, no. I did a couple of like I did a bit part on like a what was it called? It was a joke travel show that a comedian did. Oh no, I can't think of it. Um, I did a couple like of like small TV spots
Okay.
over the years. I taught one of the bachelors how to do stand up. That was a big one.
Yeah. How did that work out? Did he do it well or
Uh, he had an audience full of people that was excited to see him.
that's what
He d-
matters, yeah.
he did his best. Nobody does a good job on their first commander set, comedy set.
All right. Jay Sherwood wants to know what bracket is lasagna tier.
Oh, lasagna tier is all tiers. So for those who didn't listen to the Commander Sphere, lasagna tier was something that Dan and I talked about all the time. It was a deck building mindset about building a deck that was for the table to enjoy, basically, was the idea. Where it was like you build a deck that you're excited to play, but also one that you're not hesitant to like share with others. And it did sort of exciting things, and it was fun for everybody to get a piece of. And I think you can build that way um, at many of the power levels. I don't I'd like CEDH. I don't think that's really part of it. They're not. A lot of what we talked about was like empathetic deck building and considerate deck building in terms of like how many turns you take up and how fast you can win and what you're doing to people. Um, and that's not really like CDH is about get it done, which is sick. So I think, brackets 1 through 4 can all be done in a lasagna tier style, but it was always sort of specifically um, more of a 2-3 situation.
Okay. Do you got time for a few more questions? We're almost close
Yeah,
to.
maybe.
Okay.
No, I'm good.
Sega Genesis would like to know if you could design any commander card, what would it be? Have you thought about that?
Ooh. Oh, I want a new Feldergriff so bad. I don't want to replace mine. I just wish that that character would return.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like we've had questing Feldergriff, and that was the last time a Feldergriff showed up on anything. Um, so I don't know. I like anything in that realm would be very exciting. I I like cards that sort of mess with the social dynamic of things. I really liked Círdan from Lord of the Rings is like a voting sort of mind game type card. So those are all uh, the types of cards that I would try to design. I designed a card years ago that I still think would be kind of fun, and it's kind of close to the new Kumbal, the white black Kumbal. Like they're all white black. The one that when your opponent makes a token, you get that token. But it was like it was 2 mana and it was white blue, and it said at the beginning of your turn, each opponent decides. I don't know. They make like a food or a clue or a treasure, and then you get whatever they make. So it was just like it was sort of like the rhino, I guess.
Hmm.
It's the 4 mana white rhino that I don't know the name of. I never know it. That's why the papers are so long on the show because I need the names written down.
Yep. I would be the exact same way. I can't. There's like 30,000 magic cards. I can't remember a single damn one of them.
It's the 4 mana 3/3 that you vote for money, friends, or secrets. Thunder Junction can come ball.
Oh.
Yeah, that guy.
Are you talking about Master of Ceremonies? Is that what that
Yeah,
is?
that one.
Yeah, right. I
It's
got
sort
one.
of like that, but it was cheaper and it was like I think it gave them the option. They could make a treasure, and if they did, you did, something like that.
Okay.
So it was a very tempting offer type of thing.
Big Saddle wants to know what's your favorite flavor text from the Deadpool Secret Lair?
God, I would have to look it up. What's the one on the Deadly Relic? Because that one has a big unicorn on it. I'm not sure. I don't know him offhand. Draw me
Uh,
like one of your French cards. Look at me, I'm Chandra Nalar. Nah.
Deadly Relic says, I normally charge for my Merc services, but I just can't say no to someone who controls their commander.
That's fun. I like they're self-referential and sort of fourth wall breaking. That's very Deadpool.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right, let's see if we can knock out a few more questions here. Mike, again, who is your favorite magic artist and what's your favorite magic art? We talked about that. We'll skip that one.
Yeah.
Rachel, Big Dig Dude says, Rachel, what's a deck or playstyle you didn't expect to enjoy as much as you did or do?
I struggled with mono black for a really, really long time. I It felt like every mono black deck that I picked up was just sort of aristocrats or busted. Like, and I think there was 3 iterations of mono black decks before I found one that I kind of liked, and it was Search for Blex, which is technically Golgari. Um, and then after that, I built Nashi, mono black Nashi, and now I've built mono black Sidisi. And so I've sort of really cracked into my graveyard era lately, which has been fun. But I really like just straight up Reanimator, I think, which is not necessarily something that Commander players play a lot because it sort of tends to devolve into like looping Gary. But I like, getting a thieving amalgam in play on turn 4 and letting this big 7 mana problem devolve. I think that's fun.
Morgan wants to know, what are your beer recommendations?
Ooh, I tend to drink like browns and reds for a long time when I was in Denver, but then I moved to Los Angeles and now I drink more like Hefeweizens. I really like uh, Little Something Something, and I like uh, Stardust, Elysian Stardust. Star is the one I probably drink just the most, but sours a lot. I don't know. I'm flexible.
All right. I have no input on that. I don't drink beer. I drink everything else,
No?
though.
Look, I lived in Chicago, then
Uh,
Iowa, then Denver. You drink beer.
I live in Milwaukee, so
Milwaukee's the
that's weird.
beerest. How did you do that?
Well, I mean, I just never acquired a taste for it, but then I also started having trouble with gluten, so that pretty much
Oh,
sealed the deal for me.
that'll do it.
Yeah. Big Sato wants to know, what's your favorite MTG storyline? Do you pay attention to the lore much?
I'm not super into the lore. I kind of like the first storyline that I even knew had a storyline was War of the Spark, which was sort of a weird time to get in because it was the, climax. Um, but I like the small side stories typically. Like I like looking at a card and knowing a full moment. I think a Johnny has a very cool story.
Okay. Uh, yeah, I don't pay attention to the lore at all. I just like the
No,
pretty cards, you know.
I like the pretty cards.
JJ Mickey wants to know, how's your standing in the CZ Canlander League? Do you?
Oh, we're on our third tournament. So we're starting our third one next week. And I'm running back a different version of the one that I ran in the last season, much upgraded this time, I think. So the first one I won that tournament. The second one I think I got like fifth or sixth. And then this one we haven't started yet, so we'll see.
Okay. Nate Dog 2 wants to know, when you're not playing Commander, what kind of Magic do you like to play the most?
Cube. And
Cube, yeah.
Canlander. We have a vintage cube. I love drafting a vintage cube. I play Dan. We have a Dan deck that I like a lot. But it's cube or Canadian Highlander for sure.
Okay.
I really like the competitive edge of Canlander.
Triple Sevens wants to know, what are your most and least favorite colors in EDH?
um, my most favorite is white. That's I just sort of always find myself gravitating towards what white's trying to do. Um, I see green as sort of a necessary evil. So I green's sort of my least favorite to play, but it's just sort of in the mix all the time and it makes your deck better, so it's frustrating. But after that's probably red.
Okay.
I think I'm like white, black, blue, red, green.
Okay. Well, we're going to call this to a close here, but before we do that, we're going to do a quick lightning round of questions.
Oh,
Just a handful of really
ready.
quick questions before we go. Favorite movie?
Uh, uh, Best in Show.
Wow, good choice. I like it. Favorite musician or band?
Um, oh God, that was terrible. Dixie Chicks. They're the Chicks now. That's
Really?
not even that's not even a good answer. That's just the one I could think of right now. I listen to a lot of like folk music and like Americana country style.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Favorite video game?
Baldur's Gate
Baldur's
3.
Gate 3. Excellent. Favorite food?
Um, Sushi, but
Sushi.
ramen is also very good.
Okay. So just Japanese food in general
Yeah.
has got your love.
Yes.
What kind
Yeah.
of what kind of sushi are you most excited about?
Um, I like barbecued eel a lot. Tuna is a classic but good. Um, like hand rolls largely,
Okay.
but
Very good. What's the last thing you ate?
oh God, I had a cup of noodles at lunch.
Cup of
It-
noodles.
yeah, like a microwavable ramen. Not so good. Not a good answer.
Sorry. That sounds terrible. Did you
I
is
know I
that like
haven't
at the
eaten dinner
command
yet.
zone vending machine or something?
Oh, we have an unbelievable mess of snacks that are
Uh,
just toxic. It's like, do you want chips or Cheez-Its or Cheetos or Rice Krispie treats or Sour Patch Kids? And I'm like, yes. It's terrible.
favorite adult beverage?
Beer,
Beer.
for the most part, yeah.
Okay. Anything else you're a
Tequila if
big
I'm
fan of?
I I'll drink like tequilas. Cocktails is sort of the my second option. I don't drink a ton of wine or anything,
Okay.
but I'd say
Fair
beer.
enough. Favorite Pokemon?
Ooh, I was talking to somebody about this recently. I really like Mamoswine is one of my favorites. But Ninetales was always my favorite when I was a kid.
Very good. Very good. All right. That is all of the questions that we have for you today, Rachel. Um,
Thanks for having me. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you so much for being here. I feel very lucky to have gotten this time with you. Before we go, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you online, how they can support you, and any upcoming events you're going to be at?
Yeah. Um, I'll be at MagicCon in Las Vegas. We're getting ready for that. Very excited. But you can find me on Blue Sky. I'm still on X, although I'm not really posting there. I'm also on Instagram, but I also don't post there very often. And Rachel Reeks. Um, so mostly Blue Sky these days. And watch the Command Zone podcast. That's my baby. That's what I spend all my day trying to figure out how to make it as good as possible for y'all. And then I also play D&D live on every Monday at 7 p.m. Pacific with a group of comedians. We're wrapping up our sixth arc. We've been playing a 5-year campaign. It's a Spelljammer campaign. It's called Better Than Heroes.
Rachel, I have a confession. I have never played Dungeons and Dragons.
It's fun.
I know. I'm like the worst kind of nerd.
I mean, I didn't play for a long time. I was really worried that I would feel silly doing it, and you just have to play with the right group, and it's loose, it's fun, it's a good excuse to hang out with your friends.
Absolutely. All right, friends. I'm your host, Andy Zupke. You can find me on Blue Sky at Zupkeep. That's Zupkeep. We are off next week. We're gonna get a little bit of R&R, but we'll be back in 2 weeks. That's the 22nd, and we will have Joe Johnson on the show. So make sure to come back in 2 weeks and ask him all of your questions. We are gonna raid Steel City MTG. They're playing some arena. Looks like they're probably getting into some Tarkir stuff. Tell them we said
Nice.
hello. And take care, everyone. Bye bye.